Hello, hello. Welcome to Common Censored. I'm Lee Camp here with Eleanor Goldfield,
Hello, hello.
and I think I've got it. I think I got the virus. My calf kind of hurts. It's been hurting a lot, and
I think you're all right.
no, but you don't understand. It hurts like a lot.
No, I do.
And
I do.
Maybe
I
the
really
virus. Maybe the virus is in my calf. Also my ass. Well, I don't want to get into it, but there's an
I don't
ass
want to get into your
situation.
ass either.
There's an ass situation.
I'm
And,
sure that there is, but I think that's
also
unrelated.
A little. It's a little sore in my nostril.
Left or right?
Both. Is that corona? I think.
No, I think it's only your left nostril. Then you're fucked.
Okay.
But if it's both, you're fine. It's just hay fever
All right. So I've got hay fever in the nostril and
and an ass situation that we
uncertain.
really don't need to get into.
The ass is a big question mark.
I'm sure it is for everyone.
Welcome everybody. I've just found out I don't have coronavirus. At least I'm told from the doctor in residence that I'm gonna be.
Disclaimer, everyone. I am not a real doctor.
I'm gonna
Please
be all right.
consult your physician before paying attention to anything that we say medically on this show.
Except the ass part. I think that was true. This is the show where we talk censored stories and people, sensible solutions, and common ground movements to fight and build.
And sometimes other stuff, like Lee's ass.
All right. Can that not be the ongoing joke for the entire show?
Your fault.
All right. So we're going to get into a lot more coronavirus stuff because there is basically one story in this nation, and I'm not making fun of that. I think it's pretty fucking important. And now that it's become also the entire economy of the United States and much of the economy globally, that makes it an even bigger story.
The entire limping economy.
Yeah, the entire limbing, because its calf hurts and it's got an ass situation.
Oh, now who's going back to that joke? God damn.
So, New York City sounds really bad. I'm sure some of you are listening in New York City. I used to live there for 12 years. Glad I'm not in New York City at the moment. So apparently someone dies every 9 minutes from coronavirus in New York alone. And it could be even worse than that because I was listening to an interview with an FDNY medic, Fire Department of New York, and she was saying that they've had first of all, she said half the department or more, 2/3 of the department's out with symptoms. But beyond that, she was saying they're having tons of cardiac arrests. And obviously, when you go to a cardiac arrest at an apartment or a house, sometimes the person dies. And she said that, so they, they have plenty of plenty sounds like positive thing, but they have a lot of heart attacks recently and people dying from them. And she's not actually certain that any of those get tested. So it's possible none of those are counted in these impressive in a bad way counts of those dying from coronavirus. Because probably some of these heart attacks are people who had the other symptoms like difficulty breathing, and then they have a heart attack.
And so they're basically not testing people who die.
Well, if they die in a hospital, they are.
Well, right, but you're usually coming into the hospital alive.
Usually, people, we cannot stress this enough. Please stop bringing your bodies to the hospital. All right,
Bring out your dead.
If you could not to weekend at Bernie's it over to the hospital, that would really help us out a lot because we've got a lot of alive people to deal with, and your bodies are not what we.
I'd actually be interested, like, what is in other countries, since our response is so shit, in other countries, are they testing bodies that haven't come in with coronavirus symptoms? Like, is that something people are doing just to get a handle on?
Well, so apparently the countries where they've done the best, what China ultimately did and what was it South Korea did, that had a huge effect, was they started testing everybody all the time. You couldn't walk to a metro station or to a store without having your temperature at least checked, and then if you wanted to leave your city or not even your city, just your area, your neighborhood, like I think you literally had to wait for like a 10-minute test or something to see if you had it. And so once you're testing everyone, including those without symptoms, you can then quarantine anyone who's got it, even without symptoms. Whereas all of us who are symptomless, and I'm not saying I have it except for that calf problem, but we all are all just walking around not getting tested. So America doesn't actually know how many we have, at all, whereas a few other countries do. Now, most countries are not testing people that don't have any symptoms.
Well, and this is a bit of a tangent, and I'll come back on course real quick. But when you mentioned that, like, if you want to leave your neighborhood, then you were tested, and I came to think about like just the structure of U.S. cities and U.S. culture, which is car culture, and the fact that most people live in neighborhoods without any stores, and you have to get into your car and then drive.
The food deserts.
Even if you're not in a food desert, like I'm thinking about Charlotte, North Carolina, where I grew up, there were, even like in the ritzy neighborhoods, it was just like a bunch of big houses. You then had to get into your car and drive like 10 minutes to get to a store, which means that nobody's staying in their neighborhood, but they're all going to the same grocery store and then taking all that shit back to their neighborhoods.
Well, you and I both grew up in the suburbs, and as a teenager or whatever, it sucked because there was nowhere to go to like get into trouble. It's just these like dark, dead streets. There's no like, the 7-Eleven is a 20-minute walk away.
You go to the mall.
Well, yeah, if you had a car.
No, well, true. But before then there was somebody's parent that would drive you to the mall on a Saturday, and then you just wander around the mall. And I never really had money. And I had friends that were like, that just had their parents give them like $100 bills. And so I'd be walking around the Gap and just like smelling their grass perfume, which I actually really liked. Anyway, that's a little window into my life that no one needed. But yeah, so I think that's just an interesting thing that I pinged on. It's like people can't stay in their neighborhoods even for those essential things like groceries. So you have this continuing to spread because no one can really stay put.
Another tangent, which maybe we'll get into. Yeah, actually, we will kind of get into this in a minute. But another tangent, because you were saying that, so I'm picturing people taking, Lyft and Uber and taxis to get places because, you and I don't own a car. There's a lot of people that don't own cars anymore if you live in a city. But all these tweets, I know one of them was from Obama, but a lot of high-level people saying, now we're all realizing how thankful we should be for these heroes like the custodians, the janitors, and the drivers of the cars, and the people working at the stores, putting their, lives on the line to make sure our system runs. And it's like, most of these people, sure, there's a few strange people out there, but most of these people are not doing this because they were like, I'm going to fucking put my life on the line to make sure I get some fucking dope across town. Or I'm going to put my life on the line to make sure that person can purchase their Hot Pockets. No, they need to make a living. And so really they're forced on the front lines. Well, and I'm sure some of you listening have those jobs where you now have to be, in front of a lot of people, whether it's at a store or some of the schools that are still open or whatever. And it's like, yeah, some people are doing it because they want to help the system, but a lot of people are doing it because they fucking got to get a paycheck.
Well, and that's why there have been and continue to be strikes. I don't know if we want to jump into that or if I'm...
We can let's jump into it, but we got to remember to come back. So,
okay.
Just okay. So it's like you got to take notes on the alternate timelines. It's like Back to the Future, where we're going into a different timeline. We're cutting down under the initial timeline.
Everything you're
saying.
And
so this is an alternate reality where we're on the. Okay.
I don't think Back to the Future had alternate realities.
No, it did. Yeah, they go back to the fucked up 1985. It was probably the best one. No, I think it was the best one. I mean, Back to the Future 2. I mean, some people say Back to the Future 1, and I'd say, come on. It's got to be Back to the Future 2. Because they go into the alternate reality where everything's fucked up. And by the way, hold on, this actually matters. By the way, Biff, who becomes the ruler of the town, he's the bad guy.
It's like the Trump.
Dude, he looks just like Trump. The fucking aging makop they put on him and the fake hair and all that shit. He looks just like Trump. It's like, and he's a casino magnate. They couldn't have better predicted we're in the fucking bad reality that they have to save everyone from in Back to the Future 2.
Wasn't there an almanac involved?
There was an almanac.
I can't remember. It's been so long.
It was not a farmer's almanac. It was a sports almanac, I think.
It's been so... Well, yeah, I can't imagine a casino magnate having a farmer's almanac. Anyway, okay, wow, talk about tangents. Anyway, so strikes. Folks might have heard about... We talked about the rent strike last week, which the rent strike is popping off tomorrow, April. we're recording this on Tuesday, March 31st. The rent strike is
Don't give away our secrets.
Scheduled to pop off tomorrow, April 1st, in several places all across the country.
Just as a reminder, you should become part of it if you want to do it, not just don't pay your rent, because that'll get you fucked.
Yeah. So Amazon workers and auto workers and Whole Foods workers, which are part of the same company, are walking off their jobs in protest of unjust and unsafe labor practices. And for those who don't know, Amazon and Whole Foods are all part of the same like essential services, because God forbid we stop ordering dildos at a time like this. And that's the other thing, is that orders have actually increased because people have nothing to do but stay home and order
things. I want
things.
to tell my favorite line that I've ever read in an article.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
It's an article about Pier 1 imports and how these the warehouse workers are working like crazy because everyone's home, so they're ordering all their shit online rather than going to the store. So that means online orders have increased something 600%, 700%. They're doing like 7,000 orders in that little warehouse alone a day, and the worker's like, yeah, a lot of this stuff is just unnecessary. I mean, I don't want to die for fragrant oils. And I was like, oh, that's a beautiful line. I mean, if that doesn't encapsulate so much about our economy, about our endless consumerism, about our buying culture, I don't want to die for fragrant oils. And then they're going to write the history books and they say most Americans died due to excess purchases of fragrant oils. And look, I'm a bit of a hypocrite because without even really thinking about it, last week I ordered a ZZ Top vinyl. So I don't know if someone wants to die for ZZ Top either, but
I think I'd rather die for ZZ Top than for fragrant oils. I mean, if I had to choose, gun to my head. But yeah, so the thing with Amazon is that, of course, because, Bezos, the richest man fucking in the world, is not offering sick leave as a matter of policy. You can apply. If you're a contract worker, you can apply for sick pay if you test positive for the coronavirus, which means you first have to get access to that test.
Is the application just a vomit bag and you just deliver it to his door?
I
You're
wish.
Like, see, this is me sick.
I wish. So basically, And this is going beyond. I mean, there are a bunch of smaller strikes that I don't even know about, but these are attached to larger companies. And for instance, these warehouses employ thousands of people, and they're breeding grounds for this pandemic because people are just shuffling. We've talked about the conditions at Amazon warehouses. People are shuffling back and forth. There's no time or space to properly sanitize things, to properly to use proper safety precautions.
You certainly can't wash your hands regularly because they dock you for like bathroom breaks. I mean, at some of those warehouses before the coronavirus, people were wearing diapers so that they could keep working without taking a leak. I mean, that's how fucked up the system has gotten. So I'm sure they're not washing their hands every other purchase, every other box they grab.
There are other workers with the company Instacart, it's basically like the Lyft for grocery store delivery. So Instacart's a gig economy company that basically has people pick up groceries and deliver them to people. And they've gone on strike too because of total lack of safety precautions there.
See,
as folks know, the gig economy is infamous for not giving a shit about the people who work in their companies because they're not technically employees.
I patented an app called InstaShart, but it didn't do as well as I had hoped.
You are really ass-focused today.
I'd say 70% of all my humor is ass-focused. I mean, it's called puerile humor.
Yeah. So there are, and again, the a good resource for these ongoing strikes is Labor Notes. If y'all go to labornotes.org, you can find out about strikes that are ongoing. You can find out about issues that people are working on. For instance, something that's absolutely fucking disgusting is that medical professionals are now wrapping themselves in fucking trash bags.
Oh my God. Apparently, a nurse in New York City died, and she was one of the ones wearing a trash bag.
Yeah. And I've been in touch with a friend of mine who's an emergency room doctor, and she says that she's like the head of a team of doctors and nurses in
Hold
the
on, the head of
emergency
the
room.
A-team? That's awesome.
And she said that she's struggling to keep her folks safe, and trying to connect with local people that are willing to try and make masks and things. I mean, it's fucking absurd. You'd think that we lived in some war-torn country that we've been bombing for the past like 20 years, that we have no access to basic PPE.
Yeah, and something else that goes with that, with the overloaded hospitals and everything, is people shouldn't call or people shouldn't go to hospitals for frivolous, smaller things, because the system's already overloaded. You're more likely to get coronavirus at the hospital. They're not going to see you quickly. And so it's kind of similar to don't order fragrant oils online right now.
Right. You don't need them.
It's like there's certain things Americans have gotten used to, and, tiny little purchases that aren't, that are just forcing some warehouse worker to sprint around is not a good idea right now, and neither is showing up to the hospital for nothing.
And I just want to, before we move on, the strikes are really important to support because it really highlights, what are considered essential workers right now, and how these people uphold the entire fucking system, and they're never given the credit for it. But right now, if and there are people in the transport industry, in the grocery industry, in the medical profession that are going on strike, and when these strikes happen, shit goes from terrible to even worse. And that's not on them.
What
it's
do
on
you mean by shit?
When what?
I didn't know if you meant like economically for the business. You said when they strike, shit goes from bad to worse.
Well, right, and I'm getting to that.
Oh, okay.
Basically, the situation that our entire economy is resting on, this faulty foundation, like this top-heavy system that is placed on the shoulders of people that are already marginalized, already oppressed, and then you bear down even harder, that is not sustainable. And so people going on strike to demand basic precautions, on top of the fact that before this shit even started, they didn't have basic human rights. They didn't have health care. They didn't have a livable wage. They didn't have, sick paid leave or anything like that, maternity leave. They didn't have the most basic of human rights, and now they're being oppressed even more and asked to basically die for Wall Street, which is why the hashtag not dying for Wall Street has been trending around these ongoing strikes, because people are really fucking sick and tired of being continuously asked to just suck it up and die so that the economy can keep grinding. And grinding these people up in its gears. So, we're seeing this happen in the transport industry, auto workers. We're seeing this happen in the food industry. We're seeing this happen in, agricultural workers, as well as people in grocery stores. We're seeing this happen at Amazon, bar workers.
And the workers can definitely win gains. It does happen, especially in times like with this, when they're most needed. You won't hear much about it on your mainstream media, because whenever the workers win at something, using a strike or the threat of a strike, our mainstream corporate media is basically told to ignore it as if it didn't happen, because they don't want to give other workers the idea that they might have power, that they might have leverage, that they might have some control over this fucking system that is beating them silly and beating them into a pulp. And it really is pathetic that even when these workers win these gains, occasionally it's not talked about. It should be celebrated, and other people should be made aware of it, that this is possible. Of course, it takes a lot of organizing, it takes careful planning, and it takes a clear list of demands usually, to really have success with that type of thing. But it does happen.
Well, yeah, and I think
many workers have been getting hazard pay and things like that.
Right, and just consider, one of the areas that people are striking in is city maintenance. Imagine if just the trash stopped getting picked up.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine that compared to if Jeff Bezos doesn't show up for work, Would nobody would even fucking notice. But the trash stops getting picked up and it would be fucking mayhem. Just 1 week. 1 week of the trash not getting picked up. And there would be riots in the street. Like, our system is so fragile because of how it's constructed and how much force is placed on those who literally hold it up and how much they're expected to hold up. And so it's very important that those of us who aren't in these industries support those who are in those industries and are demanding, basic safety precautions and not crossing the virtual picket line, because obviously we're not out there crossing any literal picket lines at the moment.
And I want to go off on a tangent here about strikes. There is a strike that I don't know if I've talked about it on the podcast yet, but over at Truth Dig, and
yeah,
I'm kind of a part of it, even though I didn't have anything to do with the planning of it or anything else. Some of you may know that I, for a couple of years, have written for Truth Dig. I've been a contributing columnist, and I like their work over there. And Robert Scheer, who founded it, is a kind of legendary journalist, 30 years with the LA Times and stuff. And anyway, the publisher over there was doing everything she could to force out Robert Scheer, and apparently also force out Chris Hedges and me. We were some of the people that she despised at
because
Truth.
You were too radical.
Because we were left of, MSNBC, left of the mainstream. We tore down the laughable Russiagate.
I've always felt you should be more Maddow.
More Maddow, yeah, more Rachel Maddow. We released the truth about, or revealed the truth about. Some of them I didn't reveal the truth, but I shared the truth about. I didn't go to Syria and investigate it, but about the OPCW whistleblowers that showed there weren't chemical attacks and things like that. And apparently, she hates that. She hates that that her organization, her site, is left of fucking Joe Scarborough on MSNBC. And anyway, I don't know even a lot of the details. Chris Hedges asked me to be a part of it, and I said, absolutely, I'll side with the workers. So they went on strike, or went on a work stoppage. This is several weeks ago. And the publisher went on to post a defamatory thing against Robert Scheer, and then basically to close the site, Truth Dig, rather than negotiate with the workers. And again, in that, it's I don't mean me. I wasn't part of negotiations. I wasn't demanding anything, but I was siding with those workers. Mm-hmm. So if they were going to stop, then I'll do whatever they want to do. And because I'm also not in their offices. I get paid a little bit per column, but I was not, part of the workforce over at Truth Dig. So anyway, she has completely fired everyone and is closing the site or something and demanding millions of dollars. And it's a sad situation to see, but I just wanted people to know what's going on there. I will keep writing, but I hope those workers, there's talk of Hedges and many people moving to Popular Resistance, mm-hmm. and hopefully those workers can, if there is a GoFundMe to raise the funds for those copy editors and things to go over to Popular Resistance, I will share that on this podcast if that happens. Other than that, there's not a lot people listening can do, I think, except share the truth. There are some articles out there. Counterpunch has been posting many of them by Robert Scheer, by Chris Hedges, revealing the truth as to what happened to Truth Dig. And if people want to find those and share them, please feel free. But otherwise, I'm not sure what else anyone can do right now.
Well, yeah, but I think that's a great that's a great point to make. That there's always risks going on strike, and there's always the potential that you won't win, and that has to be something that people consider. However, I will say that it depends on where you're at, right? For instance, the electricians or the garbage collectors going on strike. It's electricity has to stay on, right? Garbage collectors have to collect their trash. And I'm not saying that Truth Dig wasn't a great site, but it's not essential in the same way.
I view us as trash collectors. That's how I view my job. But so that there's a bit more power in those quote unquote essential workers going on strike, because something's got to give. And in a time like this, you can
hire scabs, quote unquote, like the people who are hired.
Could you imagine if they hired a scab humor political leftist columnist to replace me?
That would be fascinating. But anyway, so that's always an option, but but in these times it's much more like tenuous and sort of jagged and sticky to go that route. So I think,
what if they got an undocumented immigrant revolutionary to replace Chris Hedges?
That'd be kind of cool. I don't think that's what she would be looking for.
They're picking him up. They're picking him up on the corner of, outside Home Depot. Like, we'll work for $5 an hour. All right, jump in the van. Please write a Chris Hedges column.
But yeah, so I think it's always important to note the risks with the strikes and how incredibly powerful it is for these people to be going on strike, and especially in times like these when the economy is crashing and folks don't have access to funds and getting their basic needs met. So again, it's super important that we all, regardless of what industry you're in, workers of the world unite. It's very important that we stand together with these folks and spread their message, spread their demands, and really get that information out there.
All right, let's keep going to, I'll do the housekeeping real quick, and then we can get going again. Folks, if you are getting anything out of this episode, please go over to patreon.com/commoncensored. We have a lot of new members. I can't thank you guys enough for joining up and making this show and every show possible. As you've noticed, we have no ads. We have no sponsors with this podcast. It is completely you all that make it possible. And like I said, a lot of new people have joined up, and I really can't thank you enough. You can... if you're waiting on a copy of the book because you signed up at whatever tier that is, if you're waiting for the Moment of Clarity book, then please email us. Anybody can email us at commoncensored@protonmail.com. You can shoot us ideas of topics or questions. Also, Eleanor's new trailer is out for Hard Road of Hope. You can go to hardroadofhope.com to watch that and find out when the movie will be out. Or get on the email list. Also, my stand-up comedy special is free for a limited time. I've finally made it free. It's at leecampamerican.com. So if that $3 to grab it before was a little much for the budget, then go to leecampamerican.com and watch it for free whenever you want. Also, my book is now 10% off at leecampbook.com. You just have to use the coupon code BPAPL. That's the initials of the book title. Bullet points and punchlines, 10% off. It's got a foreword by Chris Hedges. It's got an intro by Jimmy Dore. I hope you will check it out. And
if you want another book, my book is still available. It's the poetry and art book that I released a couple years ago. But the good thing with radical spoken word is that it doesn't...
It's soul-stomping and enlightening.
Oh, wow, thank you.
At the same time.
And that is available on my website at artkillingapathy.com. It's got some radical art in there by artists from all around the world, Syrian artist Tamam Azam, Abby Martin, and more. So check that out, and all the poetry by me if you need some quarantine radical reads.
Absolutely. And I forgot to mention that you can get extra content every week. We do an extra 10 to 15 minutes, and that is also at patreon.com/commoncensored. If you sign up at any level, the lowest level I think is $1. If you feel like you got $1 out of this show, and if you didn't get $1 out of this show, then what the hell are you listening for? All right? Get out of here. We don't need you. No, I'm kidding. We love you. Patreon.com/commoncensored. All right. Let's go back to, are we on to the stimulus package?
The quote-unquote.
Or the stimulated package, as
the
it were.
unstimulating package.
The unstimulating package. I know we talked about it some last week, but I continue to try to come to terms with what the fuck is being... I mean, the amount of money is truly astronomical, and it's even more than I think most of us thought, because apparently of the $500 billion, much of it that is going to banks, that can then be leveraged times 10. So these banks will really get closer to $4.5 trillion. There's a great article by David Dayan You can read the details of it. He understands banking a lot better than I do, and he tries to explain what the fuck is going on. But it is just a truly astronomical amount of money, and what they're giving to the American people is breadcrumbs. Although I did hear that now that Trump has finally admitted, that 100,000 to 200,000 Americans will die from coronavirus. He has said they are also going to send 50% off Hamburger Helper coupons to everybody. If you make under $50,000 a year for a family, you'll be getting those Hamburger Helper coupons. I think it's just one per family, so don't use them all in one place. Wait, you'd have to use one in one place. Okay, use it all in one place. It's just one coupon. But Hamburger Helper, I think, could go a long way. You could stretch that out 2-3 days. You can use Hamburger Helper, by the way, on various dishes. It doesn't have to be hamburger. A lot of people don't know that. And I think that is going to have a significant impact on the economy. I think we'll all be doing a lot better when those coupons arrive.
Except those of us who don't eat hamburgers.
No, it's the helper. This is not the hamburger. This helps the hamburger. This pushes the hamburger over the finish line.
Okay, but
you're thinking of hamburger.
Okay.
This is Hamburger Helper.
Okay, good.
Assistant,
thank you.
aide.
Leaving that aside.
Paramilitary forces that are dropped in to facilitate hamburger dinners.
Okay. The what you explained to me a couple of days ago, the whole tax thing, the fact that the $1,200 check is actually going to be part of your.
So I've been
trying. It's going to be taxed. I'm wrapping my head around this.
I've been trying to nail this down, and I haven't found a good article for it yet.
Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot here.
It's okay. I like being on the spot, unless it's the wet spot.
Okay. I knew that was going to go south.
You mean like below the waist? I haven't found a good article that nails this down. So I've seen some posts saying that, and they seem to be highlighting something from the actual bill. But I would like to find a source that I trust more. Anyway, that the $1,200 would come out of a tax refund if you have a tax refund coming to you. So basically, these people are saying that the checks many people are getting, if you earn under, I think it's under $100,000 a year or something for a family maybe, that these checks will ultimately come out of your taxes anyway. So you're out of your tax refund. So in fact, you're not getting anything. You're just getting an advance on your tax refund. But which very well may be true. I don't have any proof it's not true, but I just haven't found an article that I can point to and say, hey, look, these official reporters have said that.
Yeah,
but it very, very well could be true.
Either way, the stimulus package is not stimulating unless you're already part of the 1%. Because let's be honest, if you get, let's just hypothetically say that the $1,200 is, free and clear. It's not attached to any sort of tax refund. What the fuck does $1,200 buy? There is not any place that I've lived in the United States where $1,200 even covers your rent and utilities. And I know that there's rent strikes and things like that going on, but when we talk about things that people have to buy, let's say that you're not paying rent, but you also don't have an income, that $1,200 is going to go to cover things like, medical costs, because that's still very much a thing. The cost of groceries, the cost of
maybe it'll go towards your coronavirus treatment.
Exactly, which has already been in the 30,000s for some people. So, $1,200 is some bullshit, especially when banks are getting trillions every fucking day.
Well, and many of that trillions, a lot of this money is loan guarantees, which to big businesses, to corporations, which they can then use. I mean, there's very little oversight, if any, of this stuff, and so they can then use that to do whatever. They're not going to use it to pay employees more. They're probably going to use it to fill their own pockets, maybe, and invest in more advertising or something. But they're not going to. It's not going to help the employees. It's going to help the corporate owners. And the thing with loan guarantees is, if that corporation then can't pay that back, the government covers it, because it's guaranteed by the government. So if they can't afford to pay those loans back,
us.
which means us, which means taxpayers. Yeah, we cover it if these corporations can't pay back those loans, trillions of dollars. And
but if you can't pay back your student loans or your medical debt, that's your fault.
Right, that's on you. And I believe it was Joe Biden helped force through the thing that says you can't declare bankruptcy, or bankruptcy doesn't count for student loans. But another thing is when you're talking about this level of money, there's just immense opportunities for fraud. There will be fraud. There will be a lot of fraud. There will be a lot of money stolen.
The whole thing is fraud.
Because you cannot oversee trillions of dollars, even if you try. And yeah, when you're talking about trillions of dollars, $2 trillion, $4 trillion, then $1 billion, $1 billion seems like small pennies, right? It's $1 billion. But in fact, if someone or an entity or an organization or a corporation were to fraudulently get hold of $1 billion out of the trillions of dollars, that is an immense scandal. That is an immense theft. But it's not in the scope of the amount of money they're dumping everywhere. And so there will be incredible fraud, millions of dollars that basically go missing, that basically go into corporate coffers. And with the last time we did this bailout, $700 billion for the TARP funds, the troubled assets funds, $700 billion, they had an oversight, an inspector general or whatever that oversaw it, and they found fraud. But guess what? It didn't stop the fraud. It just, they pointed to it. There was no enforcement mechanism, and the people continued the fraud. So it happened last time. It'll happen this time.
Yeah, and I mean, it just shows how I saw some funny in a dark way, some funny posts on, I think it was Bored Panda, that they had, responses to basically the 1% demanding bailouts. Like one of the things was like, Boeing says that they're not going to make it. They absolutely need a bailout. And then, and then one of the responses was, well, why didn't they save some money and stop eating avocado toast? Because, this is what people say to poor folks. Well, if you just pick yourself up by your bootstraps, save some money, and stopped wasting it on pointless things like a cell phone, then you'd actually have enough money to pay your medical bills and pay your student loan debt. And this kind of bullshit that is absolutely absurd when you consider that people don't have access to a livable wage, and rent has spiked astronomically in comparison to wages.
If we had a legitimate society, then someone could, let's say someone who's complaining about their student loans, and then the rich person says, well, stop spending money on avocado toast. Well, we should have a society where you could afford to go to college and also have a piece of avocado toast once every 3 months with your friends. Like, that shouldn't be outlandish.
I saw that there was a protest outside of Health and Human Services here in D.C. like a year or so ago that I was a part of, fighting for universal health care. And there was this fucking brilliant, 20-something-year-old who was up there and was so passionate. And this was right after some jackdick had gone on Fox News and said, well, it's because these kids keep buying cell phones and eating avocado toast that they can't afford their medical bills. And she was basically shitting all over it. And she's like, you know what? Fuck that guy. I want universal health care and I want avocado toast. And I was like, fuck yeah. The revolution will have avocado.
I want health care and avocado toast.
Because I have a fucking right to have some fancy goddamn toast while I get free health care.
Well, and the other thing you mentioned, the why do they have cell phones? Or, they're also their big thing is they're like Fox News every month will do a report like this where they're like these percentage of people claim to be poor in poverty, and it turns out that of those millions of people, 50% have a television. 30% have cell phones or whatever, have an iPhone, and it's like. This fits into the idea that is increasingly becoming worse and worse, and it's really not going to get better, that only the rich shall enjoy the future. Increasingly the rich, or even let's just say middle class and above, so not the 40 million in poverty in the US, 40 to 60 million, whatever it is, will enjoy a future that, you have your iPhone where you have everything at the touch of a finger. You can go into a hospital and survive just about. You could take a gunshot wound to the chest and live. Like this crazy future that the poor will not get. So increasingly, as we get more and more high tech, the poor will be living like the Amish. They'll be fucking living in a tent with a butter churn while we're fucking taking, flying cars around with our remote control.
Well, and it also provides such a skewed perspective of poverty. It creates a sort of like Oliver Twist perspective where you're only poor if you're homeless and begging on the street. If you have if you have shelter, then you couldn't possibly be poor. If you have a job, you couldn't possibly be poor, right? Yeah. It's this perspective of poverty that isn't legit. Like, I've been poor, like, statistically, I guess, for much of my adult life, but I've had an apartment. Even when I was homeless, I had it was a flip phone in those days. I had a flip phone. So it's like this perspective of homelessness or poverty that has to meet these totally archaic criteria is just complete fucking bullshit.
And for a bit, you were living in your car in Los Angeles before I knew you, because I would have absolutely helped you find a couch or something. But
there were couches, but I wasn't willing to do what was necessary to stay on that couch.
For a bit, you were living in your car in Los Angeles, but the Fox Newses of the world would have said, "But you own a car."
I know,
rich person.
Right, and so it's this totally skewed perspective of what poverty, particularly in the United States, looks like. Because spoiler alert, if you for instance, like if you sign up for a cell phone contract for 2 years, you get a free phone. Like the idea that if you're poor, you have to be this like 19th century, fucking
chimney sweep,
right? With like the patches on your pants and shit. Like that's fucking, it's so absurd.
Oh yeah, they'll be like, oh, they did this with Occupy. They were like, they're down there with Occupy, but they have on Lululemon pants, and it's like, dude, you could go to like a fucking Goodwill and find a Lululemon pants. Like,
I found a Versace shirt at Goodwill once.
Yeah,
for like $5.
Or you get the knockoff brand where the Versace's missing the E or whatever, and people don't notice.
Versac.
People don't notice it's a Versac. They don't notice. So, but yeah, but increasingly we will see this where basically the poor don't get to partake in our future, and the rich. And again, in this moment, not always, but in this moment, when I'm saying rich, I mean even just middle class, will be living longer and longer. So you'll have people getting up to 110 and stuff, and the poor will be dying at 40 or 50 or whatever. And so you're getting double the life. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're getting close to that already. Yeah. And so it really is. I think this will become one of the defining characteristics of our times. The fact that the poor will not basically be in the same fucking era as the rest of us.
Right.
All right. Let's keep going. What are we talking about? Oh, Andrew Cuomo. So we have made fun of Trump and his response to the coronavirus because he's a fucking moron, tool, narcissist, megalomaniac, sociopath. Some would say psychopath. I'll give him I'll give him a leg up here. But no, it's actually someone emailed us and asked us the difference. And I've read multiple definitions that give.
Isn't psychopath takes pleasure in hurting people, or a sociopath just doesn't understand human emotion?
Yeah, that's closer. Psychopath takes pleasure in it, but also it seems psychopaths generally have done harm to others, right. Whereas sociopath, like there's a lot of sociopaths, like, and I mean direct harm as opposed to corporate harm. But whereas there's a lot of functioning sociopaths in our society that are considered, the tops of our society, the Jeff Bezoses of the world, they don't see or they don't care. They don't have the empathy for their victims. They lack empathy for their victims. Generally, those people are in our system rewarded by becoming the tops of corporations because they are the ones most willing to, steal ideas from people, push other employees aside, have no loyalties, and so they're able to get to the top. It's certainly the case with Trump and many of his goons he puts in his cabinet and everything. And same on the Democratic side. Well, actually, that's what we're getting to. So we've made so much fun of Trump and his fucking idiot coronavirus response. Now, all of a sudden, he's admitting that 100,000 to 200,000 people will die. That's if everything goes well. That's if we continue to deal with it better than we were the first couple months. Yet he wasn't saying that at the beginning. I mean, it's just he's been a catastrophe on all levels. He's now going after health professionals for not using their masks correctly, or using supplies wrong.
Well, he's also calling them liars, saying that they don't actually need all the things that they're asking for. That's not true. You don't need ventilators. Hey, Pence, what the fuck is a ventilator? Like, he doesn't even know what he's talking about.
Well, and that would be a good use of the health professionals' time.
Right.
Just claiming
I'm just trying to hoard some ventilators over here.
I like pretending I need things I don't need. Anyway, Andrew Cuomo, the Democratic Party is now pointing to him as like, this is the way leadership should be done. And he's sitting there giving his alternate briefings to Trump's in his FEMA jacket or whatever the fuck he has on with the emblems, and he's got the flags behind him, and he's in the warehouse. He's doing the work. He's there with the warehouse people doing something with boxes stacked behind him. And that's what matters. But, in fact, Andrew Cuomo, and he may have done some things right with coronavirus right now, but in general has been a fucking shit show of a governor, and apparently continues to be.
Well, not only that, but even with regards to the coronavirus, he was giving some sort of press conference a while back and was talking about, I think you were listening more than I was, but my ears perked up at this point. He was like, well, we have some new drugs and I'm taking them. I'm taking them to see if they work. And I was like, wait, what? You can't just take medication that you don't need. That's fucking bananas.
That was that bizarre moment where Trump was saying, chloroquine or whatever shows some real promise, and it's not that. Yes, anecdotally, chloroquine or whatever it's called is showing some promise, but you don't just, as president, just walk out and say, hey, this drug that we haven't really tested, go fucking drink some, see what happens. And anyway, Cuomo, rather than saying, yeah, Trump's a fucking idiot, goes, yeah, people should try it. I'm going to try it. I'm trying it right now. I said, send me the drug. I'll try it. I'm like, what the fuck's the matter with you?
Well,
anyway, but that's not the real problem.
Okay, no, that's not the real problem, but it's just fucking bizarre.
Let's get into the real shit.
So as everyone, sits there and, jizzes themselves over, oh my God, Cuomo, what a great leader. And I think that there's some bets on as to whether they pull out the corpse that is Biden and throw in Cuomo instead. I'm not saying anything I'm now waiting. It's a bet that's making the rounds.
I'm not waiting for that to happen. They force Bernie Sanders to drop out, and then they say, well, Biden's not really healthy right now, so Cuomo is going to take over.
Yeah, Cuomo can complete a full sentence, although if he keeps taking these random drugs, who knows? But there was, so one of the things, there's just a couple little notes here, as Lee pointed out, that he's been a shit governor in a lot of ways, not least of all in terms of the environment, but he continues to butt scoot down the path of neoliberalism. And a panel appointed by Cuomo unveiled this past Thursday that it plans to reduce the state's Medicaid spending by some $400 million over the next year. This is happening.
Can I just talk about the terminology real quick before you say the next sentence?
Sure.
Reduce the Medicaid spending is called gutting Medicaid.
Right.
But they couch it in these flowery, reduce Medicaid. Oh, that sounds nice, reducing spending. It's just gutting Medicaid and knocking people off it.
And FYI, Medicaid is for the most vulnerable, right? Medicare and Medicaid are there because of the most vulnerable people in our society need to have access to, the poor and the elderly need to have access to healthcare services. Medicaid and Medicare are already horrifically underfunded in this country. Which
we could do with a drop of the Pentagon's budget.
Oh, a measly drop, like couch change version of a drop in the military spending. So, but this proposal is being put forward again, like in the middle of a global pandemic. A panel of people that's been put together by Cuomo's like, you know what we don't need is health services. So that's one of the things. The other thing that recently happened is that Cuomo has put private equity vultures in charge of the coronavirus economic recovery. So basically a little bit more than a week ago on Monday, March 23rd, he was basically he announced that he was putting in charge of rebuilding New York's economy, two people that have deep ties to Wall Street. One guy, William Mulrow, is a senior advisory director at the private equity giant Blackstone Group. And if you're familiar with Blackstone, I've covered them before. Lee, you might have as well. They are the biggest private equity firm in the world. Blackstone is in charge of horrendous projects all around the globe, be that deforestation in the Amazon, palm oil plants in the rainforests of Africa, all these kind of horrific the coal in Australia that was still going forward during the fucking wildfires.
I think they were called the biggest force for deforestation in the world.
Yeah, I mean this is just fucking insane. The other guy, Stephen M. Cohen, is chief administrative officer of McAndrews and Forbes, the conglomerate owned by billionaire Cuomo donor Ronald Perelman. So these are the guys that are in charge of the quote-unquote economic recovery. So yeah, that's just two little stories that offer some insight into where Cuomo's priorities lie, which are basically the same as the Democratic Party, the Republican Party. He very much lines up with that corporate perspective. So everyone, don't be fooled by this sort of, it's kind of like the Trudeau or Obama veil, right? Like, oh, he seems to know what the fuck he's doing, which compared to Trump or Biden, a guy that can finish a sentence and seems to have some level of intelligence is like, whoa, cool. But don't be fooled by that comparison.
And this actually, for one thing, this has a deep psychological component, which is in a crisis, same as after 9/11, people look to someone and say, Daddy, please save us. And Trump is failing to be the daddy figure that is going to save people. He's failing to, now, granted, there are some idiots out there that think, oh, he's doing a great job. But in general, he's failing to actually lead. He's failing to stick with an actual straight talking points that aren't changing every day. Even if they were the truth, which many of them are lies, he's failing to actually give people a straight path forward. And so there is no, so there's a void there. Who is the daddy figure? Well, it's not going to be Trump. It's clearly not Biden. Bernie Sanders has stepped back in a lot of ways, and is not, and of course he couldn't be the figure, the leadership figure anyway, because the mainstream media isn't going to talk about him, and people are looking to mainstream media right now to see what the answer is. So that means there is this void. Same thing after 9/11. George Bush failed to fill the daddy figure void, and so it was picked up by Giuliani. And Giuliani, who was this terrible mayor, total fucking madman, all of a sudden had like a 90% approval rating. Everybody was loving Giuliani. People were talking about how he should, be the next president and everything for a few months, and then they came back down to earth. And so now they're doing that with Cuomo.
Yeah, it's gross. So please don't be fooled by this by this comparison, and don't be fooled by the by Cuomo. Okay, so real quick before we wrap up, I know that everything is about coronavirus, and of course that's incredibly important because it is the global pandemic. But I think it's very important that we not shift our focus entirely away from the other shit that's happening. Last week we talked about the internet bill that would basically make encryption, that would kill encryption. And so this week, as we're wrapping up here, I just want to go through some things that are important that we pay attention to.
So, and can I just add, this basically is the shock doctrine. I'm going to cover this more on Redacted tonight this week, but this is the ruling elite, the ruling powers that plan on how to get past the terrible, draconian, awful laws and ways to gut our rights, to gut our government, to gut our regulations on things. They wait for these crises, and they pounce when the crisis hits because they don't care for human beings. They are the sociopaths we talked about a minute ago. And so therefore they are waiting for a crisis to get these things. And right now is their crisis. And like I said, I'm gonna cover it on Redacted tonight, but I'm not gonna cover each of these. So let's go through some of them.
Yeah, and this is I'm not going to go in depth here. This is just like a quick little intro that to mention. So first off, the EPA has indefinitely suspended the enforcement of environmental regulation. They've said that it's because of coronavirus, which doesn't make any sense. Because of a global pandemic, you just let people pollute. That doesn't fucking scan. And the other issue is that they haven't put an end date for this. So that basically means that the EPA will disband for the foreseeable future indefinitely.
Which also is kind of what they've been trying to do to the EPA since Trump got into office. I mean, here's the slight difference that you get between Trump and the Democrats. Trump and his goons wanted to just destroy the EPA. Obama and his goons wanted, and largely succeeded, although it started before Obama, to fill the EPA with corporate heads. So the corporate heads then would keep up the guise of, we are regulating things just in a different way. Hey, it's like the what is it? FERC approves 99% of all pipelines. So the idea of FERC is, there will be a regulatory body that decides whether pipelines are really going to harm an area, whether we should go forward with them, and so that's why FERC was created. But it has been captured by corporate entities, by corporate goons, and they then approve 99% of it all. So that's the very minuscule difference between a Trump administration and a Obama administration.
It's the makeup.
It's the makeup on the thing.
Yeah.
But now, because of this crisis, they have the chance to literally just say, hey, EPA not doing anything until the crisis is over. But when would that be?
Well, right. And it's absurd. Again, like, what the fuck does stopping any enforcement of environmental regulation, how does that help a global pandemic? Of course it doesn't. It's just an excuse. And that is the foundation of the shock doctrine.
Maybe they're hoping it'll help our immune system if we're tempered in raw shit. As George Carlin said. I think drinking in a lot of fecal matter is good for people right now.
Right.
You can actually, if you run out of Purell, you can just use a pot of pig shit and urine that has been excreted from one of our many factory farms, mixed with a few chemicals. I'm sure there's some chemicals in there. And if you just rub that on your hands and face, you will be fine.
Again, disclaimer, please do not take any of this as medical advice. Moving on, several states, including Kentucky, South Dakota, and West Virginia, approved new laws meant to discourage Dakota Access-style protests, and more are on the way.
They've been trying to get these through for a while.
Right, and here's the thing. Again, with the shock doctrine, when you're busy trying to survive, figure out how you're going to pay for things and trying not to die in a global pandemic, these things move through. Another example of this, the Department of Justice has sought to exploit the coronavirus pandemic by opting to detain people indefinitely because they say, now is not the time to get into the mire of making sure they have access to a judge or defense or anything like that. That's not social distancing enough. So I feel like it's just easier if we can shove people into dark holes and just leave them there indefinitely because that's safer.
Basically, because of the crisis, we are suspending what little remains of the Constitution.
Right.
Whatever constitutional rights you still were grasping onto, we better put those on hold because people are sick.
Well, and that's if you even had access to those constitutional rights, because lest we forget, 100 miles inland of all of the borders, land and sea in the United States is known as the Constitution-free zone, which is where 3/4 of Americans live. That means that in those areas, the Constitution is not valid.
What is that from?
What do you mean, what is it from?
What's it from?
I don't know what that means.
Where does it say the Constitution-free zone?
A lot of places. A lot of places have reported on it. ACLU, a lot of alternative media outlets have reported on this as well. And yeah, it's basically it's a policy that's in place that.
But what does the ocean have to do with anything?
What do you mean? It's all the borders, land and sea. So if you look at the United States, we're bordered by land on two sides, water on two sides. Right. So 100 miles inland of all four of those borders, the Constitution is not valid.
That's not good.
No, it's not. So So another thing to note, there's in the bailout bill that just passed, there's some anti-abortion rhetoric in there that was snuck in kind of last minute in order to get this incredibly anti-woman and anti-reproductive rights verbiage into this bill because they knew that it had to pass. And this is something that they've done in the past too, right? That this idea of shoving something completely unrelated into a bill that they know has to pass, and then oops, all of a sudden you don't have access to the rights that you thought you did. And this particular anti-abortion rhetoric takes aim at Planned Parenthood. And it'll make it harder for the group to basically weather the economic storm. And it makes it impossible for Planned Parenthood to access funds aimed at stabilizing the U.S. economy because they provide, among many, many other things, by the way, 3%.
3%.
3% of what Planned Parenthood does is abortion-related. The 97% of the work that they do outside of that is basically all other medical needs that
3%, folks, of what Planned Parenthood does. So all of the attacks come based on 3% of what they do. 97% of everything Planned Parenthood does is just help women medically in other ways. Mm-hmm. And yet these organizations want to crush them.
Right. Like cancer screenings, for instance. So the final thing that I want to point out here is that recently the Secretary of the Interior basically moved to take the land of the Mashpee tribe. And yeah, you thought that the days of just legit stealing land of indigenous peoples was over. Nope. Basically, the Mashpee tribe has been disestablished and its land trust status has been removed. And this comes after literally, I'm not kidding, a tiff that Trump had with their casino plans. Trump administration is stealing indigenous land because he had a disagreement with some casino thing.
Trump is a lot like Nixon, where he just has an enemies list of people he wants to fucking destroy. And I'm waiting to see I'm amazed he hasn't done anything yet that I know of to Las Vegas, because Las Vegas hated Trump so much, this is before he was president, that they ultimately gave him his casino, allowed him to have his casino. So he has this big, ugly fucking golden casino out in Las Vegas, but refused to give him a gaming or liquor license.
It's so amazing.
So, like, literally, it's a casino with a hotel with no gaming or drinks.
Right.
And so the rooms are like, whereas most rooms in Vegas are really expensive, the rooms in the Trump hotel are like, fucking $50. Because who goes to Vegas? Now, I'm not a huge Vegas fan to begin with, but who goes to Vegas to not
drink or gamble?
Right. And so it really is just like a sore thumb of idiocy out in the middle of Vegas. But anyway, I'm sure he's finding some way to fuck them over to get them back.
Yeah, and so, this is this is ongoing. So this is not passed through this proposed legislation is not passed through Congress, and so you can still fight it. And that's this is the case with the things that I've mentioned. Even when they come as decrees, like the EPA saying they're not going to enforce things, these things rely on us to not just respond, but to be proactive in how we are going to not just fight but build. And so it's very important that while I understand that people are rightfully focused on the coronavirus, but it's super important that we not let stories like this slide, that we lend our voices and our support to folks like the Mashpee tribe and climate justice at large. It's very important that we stay in tune with things that are happening outside of the coronavirus as well.
Damn straight. That is our show, but please help us out. Help keep this episode, not this episode going, but this podcast going. Patreon.com/Common Sense. We're going to go do another 10 to 15 minutes over there. If you'd like to join us, if you feel like you got $1 out of this, patreon.com/Common Censored. Also, my stand-up comedy special is free for a limited time, leecamp.american.com. Please help me out by sharing it if you think it's worth people's while. And Eleanor's new trailer is out, hardroadofhope.com. My book is 10% off if you go to leecampbook.com and type in the initials of the title for the coupon code BPAPL, bullet points and punchlines. leecampbook.com. You can also get the digital version if you want it now. Give it to me now. Also, you'll be getting that directly through the publisher, and it is a small publisher that is struggling, PM Press, because Amazon is no longer shipping their orders, at least not during the crisis. And you know, I don't think you should be buying from Amazon anyway. So you go to leecampbook.com, you can get it direct from the publisher. Anything else?
Do it.
All right. Keep fighting, folks.
Act out.